So let's talk about Agile project management framework in relation with Scrum and Kanban, right? So Agile methodology is a project management framework that emphasizes incremental and iterative development, right? It prioritizes collaboration and flexibility in ensuring customers' happiness, right? Let's just peg it at that. Kanban is, apologies, Agile is usually placed in sharp contrast with Waterfall, which is a more rigid project management methodology, right? So, how does this relate with Scrum and Kanban, right? Remember that in our previous module, we spoke about the importance of building, of having project management skills, right? And we mentioned briefly around the importance of having a Kanban board, right? Using a Kanban board, right? So Kanban literally stems from, I think, the Japanese culture, where someone, a genius, right, came up with the idea that so that stakeholders can have a level of insight into what everyone is doing at every point in time, let us have a board where you can have three columns, namely to do, in progress, and then done, right? And then list your to do's, your task under to do's, and as you progress in, executing them, move them across the board. So take for instance creating a video. Let's assume it is a task on Kanban board, for instance. The moment I start creating that video, I move it to in progress, and the moment I am done with it, I move it to done, right? So that at every point in time when a stakeholder comes to the board, they have a fair sense of what everyone is doing. Though in recent time and across product teams, we now have different stages on the board, right? So we have backlog, which we groom from time to time to make sure that everything there is properly prioritized for the next sprint. And then we have things like in review, on production, ready for test, and all of that. But the three main section of a Kanban board is to do, what do you want to work on, in progress, what are you working on, and then done, what have you concluded. Now, Scrum is another Agile methodologies framework that embraces breaking your task into chunks. So you group your task into chunks of 2 to 4 weeks, typically, or per standard, right? Industry standard. So you break your task into 2 to 4 weeks, and then at the end of that 2 to 4 weeks, you move them to done, right? Though Scrum has like other sub topics or sub groups, and this includes sprints, sprint planning. So this is a phase where team members come and say, okay, this is what we are working on in this coming sprint, right? Which can be 2 to 4 weeks. Also, there is sprint review. So this is a stage where when we are done with the sprint, we look at all the tasks that we're supposed to do to see, okay, what have we concluded? What are we moving into the next sprint? What is our technical depth? And then, you make a report of that, have a meeting with your team members. Now, the third thing is sprint retrospective, right? This is a stage where you look at the entire sprint as a whole to say, okay, what are the processes that we got right? What are the things we need to improve on in the coming sprint so that we can increase the level of success for the team, right? And the fourth subtopic on the Scrum would then be daily stand-ups, right? Some call it daily check-ins, right? So this is a method whereby people come on the calls, right? Especially in recent time, they come on calls to say, okay, this is what I've done yesterday, this is what I'm currently working on, and this is what I will do later in the day, right? And then you're saying this is who is blocking me. So usually we ask 3 questions: what did you do yesterday, what are you working on today, and what are the blockers you have, right? The whole goal of this is to make sure that at every point in time nobody's blocked. Everybody, do what they're supposed to do, right? They call it daily stand-ups. Fun fact: they call it daily stand-ups because the first set of companies that adopted this, do the meetings while standing up, so that they can keep the time as short as possible. Though in recent time, I've seen companies have stand-ups as long as 40-50 minutes, right? I've worked in organizations like that. But ideally, stand-up should be not more than 15 minutes, depending on, the width of the team, how big the team capacity is, right? So just come on the call, or if it's physically, to say, okay, this is what I've worked on yesterday, this is what I intend to do today, and this is who is blocking me, so that all of those can then be resolved on the call. Now, to the real life application of this, right? You will see different companies these days pride themselves as agile, though when you move closer, you see that they don't tend to, some of them don't actually practice the true agile ceremonies, sprint backlogs, grooming backlogs, and all of those. But in a typical agile environment, this is how product development goes, right? So we have a list of features that want to work on, or a list of tasks that want to do, and we put that in a column called backlogs. Now, from time to time, the product manager is expected to check their backlog to do something called backlog grooming. So they groom the backlog to see, this is where we are as a team, this is what we should be working on, and at this stage they prioritize. So usually people use urgent, to prioritize things that are bugs, like production critical issues, and then they do high priority, medium priority, low priority, and no priority, right? So from time to time, as the product manager grooms the backlog, they move the tickets from backlogs to sprint backlog, right? This is to say, okay, for the next sprint, these are the set of issues that we'll be picking up, right? Now, on a Monday, typically, right, it might be any day of the week, I don't know what your team might the day your team might decide they want to start their sprint, but ideally it's a Monday. So on Monday, you come on the call to say, hey team, this is the set of features that we'll be working on. You do an estimate of each of those tasks to say, this is a large task, this is a medium task, this is a small task, and then make sure that every team member gets something to work on based on their capacity, based on their experience level, and based on the estimate. So typically what we do in most of the companies I've worked with is we make sure that everybody has at least 5 days worth of task. Some companies do 40 hours worth of task, right? So after the tickets have been prioritized and estimated, on the sprint planning session, give this task to people. Make sure that everyone has at least a equitable level of issues to work on for the sprint. The next thing to then do is decide how many days you want to use for development, how many days you want to use for testing, how many days you want to use for feedback. Pro tip: never go live on a weekend. Never push tickets to production on a Friday. The best time to push a ticket to production is maybe a Monday or a Thursday, because at that stage people are still very much available to work on issues, right? Production critical issues as they come up, right? So once that is done, once the development has happened, right, as the development is happening, you move the ticket. So the engineers move their tickets from sprint backlog to do once it has been assigned to them, and when they start working on them, they move it to in progress, right? When it is ready for test, they move it to the testing column, right? Once you test on develop or the test environment and you see that it is ready to go to production, then you move those tickets to ready to go live column, right? And at this stage, the DevOps on the decided day, the DevOps or the person handling moving issues to production comes and then move those tickets to production. Now, once that is done, the next thing for you to do as a product manager, even if you have a QA on the team, is for you to go on production to test everything. First, everything that you moved to production, and secondly, everything on production, right? And once that is done, you move the tickets to done, right? Now at the end of the sprint, so that's typically maybe if it is a 2 week long sprint, that's the second Friday. If it is a 4 week long sprint, that is the fourth Friday, right? Mind you, we don't count days that are public holidays to be part of the sprint. So once that is done, you have a team review, a sprint review, to say, oh, this is what worked on this sprint. These are some of the tickets that we couldn't conclude, so we are picking them up in the next sprint. You decide at that sprint review session. Now, the last thing to then do is a sprint retrospective session, where you come together as a team to say, hey, what did we do badly last sprint and how can we improve on it this sprint? Might be as little as, oh, we didn't have enough motivation, you should have given us a box of pizza each, right? And I think one more thing I forgot to mention is that daily stand-ups, right? So as people are working on their tickets, make sure to check in with them every day to see what is it that you did yesterday, what are the blockers you have, and see how best to unblock them. So with that, we've come to the end of Agile Product Management or Project Management, discussion on Scrum, Kanban, and how this applies in real life product development scenario. Thank you.